All right. We need this introduction for the piece that I'm bringing from Rav Hutner, which is, he's saying a tremendous chiddush, something that I think will a real good a special takeaway for us. So let me just start with a few of these psukim. Number one, Vayinachem Hashem ki asa et ha'adam. Hashem regretted. He kind of did tshuva. And this is the point really that we're going to make. We know that there's a mitzvah in the Torah called V'halachta b'drachav, imitate Deo, to imitate God. That's a mitzvah in the Torah. Mahu rachum, afata rachum. Just as God is merciful, we have to be merciful. God is loving, we have to be loving. Everything we do is imitating God. There's going to be a tremendous nuance developed here in terms of tshuva. That the way we do tshuva is really based on the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu did tshuva, which is an amazing thing to say even. Where did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do tshuva? And that's what we're going to discover. So, Vayinachem Hashem, this is really the hint. Vayinachem Hashem ki asa et adam ba'aretz. God had remorse, he had regret that he created Adam, that he created man. He's talking about Noach, right? But he doesn't say Noach. He says Et ha'adam, which is interesting, right? Vayitatsev el libon. You know, he was saddened. Kaviyachol, God was saddened, right? Vayomer Hashem emche et ha'adam. I'm going to destroy man. Asher barati me'al pnei adama, that I created. Adama me'adam, that I created from Adam. So really, there's a focus here on Adam Arishon, on Adam, right? Ad behema, from Adam, ad behema, ad remes, ad of, hashamayim, everything was created, ki nichamti, ki asiti, right? Rabbi Shem says that I have remorse, I have regret that I created man, and I'm going to destroy the world. Next pasuk, number 2, v'hakimoti et briti itach, but he tells Noach is good, you know, Noach matzachein. In the last pasuk in last week's Parshat in Bereshit, the Torah says that Noach matzachein. Actually, Noach and Chain are the same letters, right? Noach matzachein. Noach I like. Noach is very special, and I'm saving him. And eventually, when he comes off the ark, he tells him, "V'hakimoti et briti itach, I'm going to make a covenant with you. Uvata el ateva, right? You'll come into the ark. Taub, they said before he goes into the ark, rather. At a teva, that's very important. That the covenant was made before. When you go into the ark, ata uvanecha v'ishtecha, you and your sons, v'ishtecha, uneshevanecha, and your daughters-in-law, v'itach, and you. Now, by the way, this is a little bit of an aside, but an important aside. You see, the order here is really not right. You know, he tells Noach, you're going in, and your sons, and your wife. So he said, Noach, you and your wife, right, and your sons. Uneshevanecha, your sons and their wives, right? Why is it messed up? Because really, you'll see, if you look in the Torah, when they come off the teva, the first time the word mishpacha is used is in Parshat Noach, right? Until they came off the teva, the Torah, the world was built upon individuals and the life of individuals. The idea of a mishpacha, of a family, took place, and that's why the word is for the first time used when they came off the teva, because there's you'll forgive me, a watershed moment after the flood, right? We went from individuals to families. That's why Dafka, when they went, you know, when he mentions them coming in the teva, he doesn't mention them in a familial order, right? That will happen when they come off. Okay, this is just an aside, but it's an important aside for us to be aware of. Number 3, Rashi, right? Hakimoti et briti, I've established my covenant. Now what's the bris? What's the bris? What's the covenant that he makes? A covenantal relationship is between two people, right? So here it's kaviyachol between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and man. So what's the mess? So there's different opinions here. Rashi says, bris hayat tzorach al haperot shelaav shelo yirkavu v'yafshu. He made a covenant that the fruit, the vegetables, the things that are going to grow will not rot. They'll have food to eat. That's one covenant, right? V'shelo yahargu rishoyim shabado, and evil people will not kill him, right? So these are really covenantal statements that you're going to exist. In other words, that's really, these are a little bit of elements of the fact that the covenant is that you'll thrive. The Ramban in number 4 mentions something else, which is more reasonable to us. V'hakimoti et briti, more familiar to us actually. Amar Rabbi Avram, he quotes the Ibn Ezra, as he often does, the Ramban. La'ot, the sign, ki Hashem nishba lo shelo yamut. He told him, you're not going to die. You're not going to die. But Mabul in the flood, hu banav, right? And v'im lo nichtav tchila mefurash, doesn't say so at the beginning. Kasher matzanu b'mishnah Torah, you see it much later on in the Torah. Nishlacha anashim lefanenu umil hakimoti she'akayim shvati. I will do good on my promise, right? Now, what is this? The last line he's quoting from the Ibn Ezra. Shazot habrit remez lakeshet, the rainbow, right? Which we're not going to really talk about the rainbow today. If we have maybe a time at the end, we can talk a little bit about it. But the Ramban brings the Ibn Ezra that the covenant that he's talking about is the rainbow. Because the rainbow basically says, I will never destroy the world again when you sin, right? But it's a given, you're going to sin. And you're going to, maybe the world should be destroyed, but that's the keshet. When you see the keshet as a reminder that I'm not going to destroy the world, right? And he says, V'tam brit, the reason of the covenant, haskama. It's a haskama v'davar shebachru shnayim. A bris is a covenant between two people, between the Rabbanu Shalom, Kaviyachal, and man. Okay, so these are kind of introductory ideas which will hopefully help us understand what Rav Hutner is now going to say in number 5. Remember what I said to you at the beginning. The mitzvah v'halachta b'drachav, the mitzvah to copy God, that every mitzvah we do really is copying God, is emulating the Rabbanu Shalom. So he's going to talk about even tshuva, right? Somehow that we learn how to do tshuva, repentance from the Rabbanu Shalom. And it's based on these psukim and this whole idea. Okay. Lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha. This is next week's parsha, right? We could have done this next week also. But Lech lecha, this is the test of Avram Avinu. Lech lecha me'artzecha me'moladetecha u'beit avicha. Leave your land, leave your hometown, leave your father's house, beit avicha. Ve'escha l'goy gadol v'arecha v'agad l'shmecha. And I'll make your name great, and I'll bless you, right? So first of all, just mention something really kind of as an aside that I usually mention most years, that the order is chronologically backwards, right? Leave your country, leave your city, and leave your father's house. This is particularly cogent for people who have made aliyah, right? He's talking psychologically. The test of leaving was a psychological. There's not a physical test. He packed his bags and he left. That's all it was. It was much harder. There was an emotional thing. So the easiest thing to leave is your country, right? You're going to have to leave your country. So a person has an allegiance to his country, right? At one time, it was worthwhile having an allegiance to certain countries in the West. I don't know if there's any country today that is worth having an allegiance to. I never really, in my mind, I never thought what happened to Rome and what happened to Spain would happen in America or North America. The imploding of society. I never thought it would happen, and we know it's happening, right? In any case, the easiest allegiance to leave is your country. The next difficulty is your hometown, right? A person has a certain affinity to his hometown. It's a Gemara in Sota, actually. Daf Mem Zayin, the Gemara actually mentions, not about Eretz Yisrael. A person has a certain affinity to where he lived, where he grew up, the house that I remember when my kids were younger, I took them to the house where I grew up, where I was born. You have that, everybody has that, right? So, but that's okay, you get over it. But then Beit Avicha, to leave your father's house, that's the most difficult, that's the most challenging. So that's the order of the going out, okay? That's not what we're going to talk about. He's going to ask another question here. And I'm going to make you go get dressed, get your family together, pack your bags, leave your country, leave your town, leave your home. I'm going to make you a great person. I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to make you famous. I'm going to make you rich and famous. So hine, mityached nisayon zeh. This is the first of the 10 tests of Avram Avinu, right? And in this test, there's a uniqueness to this test, he says, mi bein shar hanisyonot, from all the other tests, shenitnaseh behem Avraham Avinu, that he was tested with. Bezeh, in this, shuhuftecha lo haschar, b'shah shenitztaveh al ma'aseyu, that he was given over the reward. He was told what his reward would be before it happened. He was promised what the future is going to be for him before he did it, right? V'harei b'nisayon ha'akedah, by the Akedah, right, the binding of Yitzchak, shenemar lo, he says to him, vayirash zaracha et shar oivav, your children will inherit the gates of your enemies, right? Balo ha'afsacha acharamais. This was after the Akedah was over. He benched Avram Avinu and rewarded him and promised him that he's going to grow and have success. Right, Avram Avinu is going to be Avram Avinu in the fullest sense. But that reward was given afterwards. Ya'ana asher asita ve'ilu b'shat hatzivui. But when he commanded him, Haleyu la'olah, take up your son, your only son Yitzchak, and give him as a sacrifice to me. Lo nemar v'lo nirmaz lo klum. He didn't tell him about any reward. So this is, halo davarhu, that the reward is given to him. He's told the reward before he even does the lech lecha, right? That's his question, okay? What's that all about? Next paragraph, beit. B'yichud zeh, this unique idea, ganuz yesod gadol, in this question is hidden a tremendous foundational point in Yahadus. Mivusamhu al hamavuar etzleinu b'maimer yom noraim shanazu. This is actually something that I spoke about. Rav Hutner writes, for those of you who, the first time here, you don't know Rav Hutner. Rav Hutner was one of the greatest Bali Machshava of our generation. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Rabbeinu Chaim Berlin in New York. He was in his early years, at 16 already, he was writing letters, which we have, the letters he wrote at 16, which were so poetic, and the Ivrit, it was incredible, the Lashon Kodesh. He was in Yerushalayim. He became very close with Rav Kook and with Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld was the Rav of the Eideh Hareda, the old community, and Rav Kook was the Rav of Yerushalayim. He was close with both of them, extremely close with them. In fact, in his early years, when he came to America, he had two pictures in his sukkah. One was Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, and the other was Rav Kook. Rav Kook wanted him to be the Rosh Yeshiva of the new yeshiva he was making, the central yeshiva of Yerushalayim, a.k.a. Yeshivat Merkaz Rav. But Rav Hutner had other plans and other dreams. He came to America, and he built Chaim Berlin into an extraordinary, tremendous Talmidim. And then at the age of 70, he went to Eretz Yisrael and built Pachad Yitzchak. He built a yeshiva. He wanted to have a beis medrash in Yerushalayim, which is here in Yerushalayim today. Pachad Yitzchak, run by his son-in-law, Rav Yonas and David. Rav Hutner had one child, Rebbetzin Bruria David, who some of you know who she is. She was Dr. Rebbetzin Bruria David. She was the dean of BJJ, Beis Yaakov Yerushalayim, which is really I would say the Harvard of Beis Yaakov seminaries in Eretz Yisrael. A fascinating family. Rav Hutner was a tremendous Bal Machshava. That's just a little bit of who he is, who he was, and he lives with us today through his teachings. So now, this idea, this question that I ask, he says, is the foundation, the cornerstone of a very important thing. And he says, I wrote this in somewhere else. Now, by the way, what I'm quoting you from is this Ma'amorei Pachad Yitzchak. These were published posthumously from his writings, things that he had not yet published. And that there's a footnote here, which I didn't put in, that they couldn't find this particular essay that he's referring to. But it's not Nogay. I'm just Hamadubar Haya. What we're talking about is here Hagdarat Brit, the idea of a Brit, of a covenant, B'tor Hanhaga Dilemala, that there's such a thing as a bris with God from above, shel charata of remorse, v'tikun, and correction for the future, al hamaisa shel avar, right? Now this is news, right? We know that tshuva has two basic components. One is remorse on the past, charata, and the other is kabbalah lahaba, that I make a commitment for the future. You have to have both those things. But we're seeing here that this emanates from a situational ethic with the Ribono Shel Olam, right? B'tziur shel nichamti ki asitim. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I have remorse that I created him, that means he's doing tshuva. I have regret. I have azivas hachet. I'm leaving the sin. I have remorse for what I did. That's the first stage of tshuva. Kilomar, in other words, shekach sidra hahanhaga el yonah. This is the way it was in the Ribono Shel Olam's world in heaven. Mehalech v'hanhaga shel tshuva v'tikun al ma'aseh hakodem. Right? Nichamti ki asitim. Right? This is the beginning of tshuva. God is doing tshuva. Baruch Baruch is actually doing tshuva. Right? I regret what I did, the sin that I did. Right? Harbe min hashomim ne'etzru l'hitraches al hachidush. Many people are going to hear this, and shebenekudat charata v'tikun etzlo kaviyachol. They're going to make a big mistake. They won't understand what's going on here. Mirov hitbonanut shebenekuda zu. He puts in Yiddish, but I'll just translate it. Hifsidu ikar nakuda. You're missing out the main point here. I've actually given away the main point here. Shel yisod hamaimer, what he's saying here. And it's incredible. Shevuhu shekritat brit mehava tikun lahaba al nichamti ki asitim kamoshi yitbayer. Is that the regret in the past requires a future commitment as well. That's what's happening here. Over the page. See it, it'll become clear in a second. It's going to answer his question. Gimel. Biora shel nakudas. Let me explain. Hu al pia yesod shenishna etzlenu. We know shetshuva te'una kabbalah laba b'dafka. Tshuva is not enough to say I'm sorry, charata on the past, right? I'm not going to do it. Right? You have to have kabbalah lahaba. You have to make a commitment for the future. V'kol ma'aseh prisha minachet. If someone says I'm not going to do this sin anymore, right? Beli kabbalah lahaba, but I'm not saying I won't do it again, right? Merosh yachol liot nidun kipulah shel yirat shamayim. That's definitely an act of serving God. That's definitely yirat shamayim. A person who says I won't sin again, that's yirat shamayim. Definitely, you're a God-fearing person. Aval eino nechshav ma'aseh shel tshuva. That's not tshuva. It's not tshuva until you take that next quantum leap. I won't do it again. Kabbalah, I make a commitment for the future. So not only will I have remorse for the past, but I will make a commitment for the future. Kizeh klal. This is the general rule. Tshuva te'una kabbalah merosh l'takein ha'avar. That tshuva requires at the beginning, when you start out, tshuva is not tshuva if you don't have remorse, and at the same time, I will not do it again in the future, right? And of course, the Rambam says, this is the halacha of tshuva, by the way, as we know, and the Rambam in fact says, so who's going to decide? Yodea ta'alumot. The Ribono Shel Olam himself will decide. He knows what's going on in our heads and our hearts. Ukemo shehu lamata. The same way it is with us here in this world, with tshuva, kachu gam lemala. That's the way it is with the Ribono Shel Olam. If the Ribono Shel Olam is saying, I'm sorry about doing something, at that same time, he's got to make a commitment for the future. Bichdei litzor shem tshuva. In order for what the Ribono Shel Olam is doing to be called tshuva, mitztarefet kabbalah lahaba, im nechama al ha'avar. There has to be a symbiotic relationship. There has to be a synthesis between that acceptance of the past and a commitment for the future at that moment. V'oto kabbalah, and that commitment for the future, lahaba, he hoda merosh. This is the announcement from the beginning, declaration from the beginning, al kritut brit. This is the covenant. Those two things is the covenant. L'takein hamatzav, to repair the situation, shel adam hakodem, that God is saying, I have to correct the man that I created first. Adam Arishon, Beli Kritut Brit. I created Adam without a covenantal relationship, without a covenant, and I failed. Nakut klal ze b'yadecha. Keep this in your mind. Kol habritot shenichritu me'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All the covenants that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made. B'chol hadorot, in every generation with us, einam ela shlavim, they are all rungs on the ladder, b'kabal l'tarkein, in his original commitment to repair in the future, ota tzurat Adam, that Adam Harishon, that Adam and Eve that were created, she nivra tchila b'li brit, without a brit. I have to now make the second stage of man is a man with a covenant, right? Adam, right? The new Adam. I regret I created Adam, right? So now, what's that all about now? So if you haven't guessed, Ba'amirat lech lecha Avraham, when the Rebbeinu Shalom says lech lecha Avraham, that's the beginning. Hitchil hatahalich shel yitzirat tikun oto adam shalav nemar nachamti. This is the beginning, the first stage, the beginning of his tshuva, the Rebbeinu Shalom's tshuva, on that he created nichamti. I have regret, I have remorse that I created him. So it's tshuva. So therefore, mofia kan haftachas schar. There has to be an immediate mention of the future. At that moment, the tshuva to mean anything, it's not only that I regret what he did, but I got to tell you what I'm not going to do it in the future. I'm going to not make that mistake in the future. There's a haftachas schar, reward. Lo mitor schar. Schar is a bad word. He says it's not a reward. What he tells him, I'm going to make you a great person. This is not a reward. Ela b'tor Kabbalah. I'm making a commitment that I'm making you a great person. This is part of my commitment. I have tshuva, I have remorse that I created man this way. I'm going to create him this way. This way means he will be great. He'll be something special, right? Kaviyachal Omer, in fact, HaKadosh Baruch was saying, Ani mekabel alai, I accept upon myself, lasot kach v'kach, to do so and so in the future. Es chalagoy gadol, I'm going to make you a great person. Your name will be great. You'll be famous. This is not reward. I'm just telling you, this is my tshuva. That this is the new man. The new man has a future. You're going to be great people with a covenantal relationship with me. Shahatikun sarach lahofia ketotzaah. The tikun, the repair, has to come out with a mikritu to brit, that it's a real brit. Kabbalah lahaba, there has to be a commitment to the future. Behetem lezeh, that's why bo kan haftacha hatzmuda letzivui. Therefore, this is attached. This promise is attached to the commandment. Go. You have to go. That's part of the mitzvah, right? That you go and you get a reward. Umikivan hu letzayin merosh, and he has to at the beginning. He has to do this at the beginning. Shekol ma sheyaseh b'talich zeh, everything that's going to happen, be'ikfut haftacha kabbalah kritut brit hiba. Everything that's going to happen now to Avraham Avinu and to Klal Yisrael and throughout Jewish history is a result of this covenant promise, tshuva, the tshuva of the Ribono Shel Olam. Afal pi she'ein kan brit mamish, even though, by the way, you don't see an actual bris, right? Because again, he's not referring to the examples that were given by the Rishonim that I mentioned, but mikol makom brit ben habtarim, the later covenant that he makes with Avraham in a few weeks, right? Eino ela hemshech ubirur hatmenasa mikan, the covenant between the pieces, which we'll read about in a few weeks. This is a continuation from here, right? Okay. So here it's an amazing idea. It's an amazing idea. The whole concept of tshuva, the basic elements of tshuva, being charata on the past and kabbalah for the future, is v'halachta b'drachav, is copying God, because this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did. But let's finish off what he says. Hashta, move on, now we understand. Sharak b'tzivu yizeh shel lech lecha. Dafka, when he tells him lech, the first commandment, the first test. Nemar schar merosh mitam anizkar. So from the get-go, he immediately mentions this. V'ilu ba'akeda, by the akeda, which is later on, shelo ba schar rak b'tor schar. That's a reward. That's real schar. That's a reward because of what you did, Avram, right? L'chein lo nemor ela b'sof. So that's mentioned at the end. You don't reward the child. Put the star on the refrigerator before he does what he's supposed to do, right? The reward comes afterwards. That's a regular reward, right? L'chein lo nemor ela b'sof. Kimo kol tashlumin she'enan ela b'sof. All reward comes at the end. But this reward, quote unquote, comes at the beginning because it's not really a reward, it's a Kabbalah, it's a commitment for the future. Umeyate yeh miyushav, number vav. Now we understand Kushi HaKatuv, that now by Noach, because Noach is part of this promise he made by Noach, right? It's going to be ultimately Avram Avinu, but it starts with Noach. The new man, after Adam Arishan, right, there were 10 generations from Adam to Noach. Noach is now, rather to Avram, but Noach is kind of the first into Avram, right? He's not wasting time. Therefore, Hakatuv Nemar B'knisat Noach Lateva, when he goes into the ark, before he takes off, right? V'hakimoti et briti itcha uvata el hateva. I'm making this bris with you, now you can go into the teva. In other words, he's promising the future, right, when he does the remorse for the past, the generation of Adam, the generation of Noach, the terrible generation of Hamas, whatever was going on there, right? But the promise that I'm not going to reproduce that man, I'm going to create another man, but I have to give you a promise for the future. I'm going to make a covenant with you, right? He tells him before he goes off on his cruise, right? Hello, adayin lo nichrita shum brit ba'olam. There was no brit yet. Im kein al eze brit medubar kan. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Where's the brit, right? So again, these are all futuristic things that the Rishonim told us. Rashi and the Ramban, right? It's future, right? Your crops will grow. The rainbow God will never, but that's all future, right? So that's his final paragraph. Omek Hapshat, the depth here is, Nimsa Meforshim Shapirshu Shazot Habrit Remez Lekeshet. This is he's quoting the Ramban here, that this is the rainbow. Afshat Dayan Lo Noda, even though he's talking about the rainbow, but there's no rainbow yet. But he's promising you there's going to be a rainbow, there's going to be a Brit. There's going to be a Brit, right? V'lo huskara Brit Hakesh, he doesn't mention it. V'heim heim advarim, that's exactly what we're saying. Noach matzah chen. Noach was found with chen to the Rabbanon. Noach mehava shlav rishon. Noach was the first rung on the ladder. B'tahalich hatikun, in the repair, da'asiyat ha'adam, in the creation of man. Motzi'im anu kfar gam kan pu'ula v'tnua derech kabbalah lahaba shalmaila. So with Noach also, it's not enough. Nichamti, I'm sorry, I'll hate. Kaviyach HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, right? But I'm making a Kabbalah for the future. As you get on, I'm telling you, you're going to have something very special. Motzimanu kfar gam kan pu'ula atnua derech kabbalah laba lefnei knisato l'teva, before he gets into the ark. Kfar nemar lo v'hakimoti et briti, I promise you, haynu haftachat brit afilu lifnei she'igi la'avir ha'olam, even before he gets onto terra firma, right? Bepoel mamish, really, okay? So this is, as I say, I think you will agree, classic idea for us, that the whole idea, even of tshuva, is something of imitating HaKadosh Baruch Hu, okay? The second piece I have is a little bit lighter, in a certain sense. This is from Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, right? For those of you who are joining, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was the Rosh Hashiva of Yeshiva Torah Vodaas in New York, also one of the great Gedolim, a Talmud of the Altum in Slobodka. Many of the great Rosh Hashivas in America, such as Rav Hutner as well, were students in Slobodka Yeshiva. Rabbi Yaakov actually was a Rov in Toronto for 5.5 years before he was taken as the Rosh Hashiva in Torah Vodaas.
Who was the Rav in Toronto?
Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. We're doing Emes Yaakov. In fact, I'll tell you interesting. When he came to be the Rosh Hashiva, so he gave a shir, and he gave a shir like he said Gemara Rashi Tosfos. He didn't quote. He didn't bring all the Rishonim and Achronim. He said a blood shir, and the Bachar were not enamored with him. Rabbi. He was a rabbi in Toronto, becomes a Rosh Hashiva. He's just saying the Gemara over with Rashi. One day, he came to shir, and he said everything on the daf. He was quoting from Rishonim, Achronim, all over and the guys were hopping. They said, Rebbe, this was fantastic. What happened? He said, yeah, I'm not going to imitate the way he spoke, but he spoke in a very soft. He said, I had a wedding last night and I didn't have time to prepare. Right? True story. Okay? So, now this idea from Rabbi Yaakov is really it's a diamond in the sense that it's, it's nothing new. To quote the Ramchal, Latzato, in his introduction to Mesilas Yesharim, he says, whatever I present to you I'm not teaching you anything new. I'm just going to review things that everybody knows, right? Now, it turns out that Mesilas Yesharim, according to the Vilna Gaon, was written with Ruach HaKodesh. The Latzato was actually put in Cherem, and he had to run away with it. Until 200 years later, Lutzato's writings were discovered, and the Gaon said what they were, and the Vilna Gaon said, I would walk all the way to Italy if he was alive by foot to hear his Torah. Anyway, he said that's what he says in the introduction to Mesilas Yesharim. Everything I say now is nothing new. It's just I want to review something that is well known, and that's in a certain sense what Rabbi Yaakov presents to us now. Okay. Vayomer Arur Kanan Eved Avadi Miyel Achiv. In the Parsha, we know the terrible Maisa that Cham, two of his children, they desecrated their father Noach, right? And they abused him. And Cham's son Canaan, right, was sort of part of this. According to one opinion, right, he was actually played part in the role of revealing his Noach's nakedness, whatever they did, right? But Canaan was cursed now. Canaan is cursed, and he's going to be a Eved Avodim. He's going to be servant forever. Hine, Yeshnan Misonenu Meumata Olam. Many of our enemies in the nations of the world, anti-Semites, Hatoanim, they taina sheklal Yisrael hi uma gazanit. The Jewish people, this is a very appropriate idea for today, by the way, as you'll soon see. We're racist. We're a race. The Jews are a race, right? Shahari HaTorah Meret Sheknan Arur. So the Torah says that Canaan is cursed. V'hu yeh eved avadim lachiv. They'll be our servants. Hare shehishpila HaTorah et geza Canaan l'madreget eved. So the race of Canaan was made into a servant, a slave. Aval, and so we're, aval haemet, vada hi lokein. It's not true. Daha ze barur, shedat haTorah hi keneged gazanut. The Torah rails against racism. Torah rails against racism. V'kvar hochachti ze b'chidushai le'el v'parshat Bereshit. I discussed this in a previous chapter from a Mishnah in Sanhedrin. And it quotes the Mishnah, Mipnei ma nivra ha'adam yechidi. Why is a well-known Mishnah? Why was Adam created one? Like, you don't have that, like the animals. The animals were not created one, they were created two, right? Why was Adam created one? It's unique. Shelo yomar Adam l'chaveros. A person shouldn't say, Abba gadol me'avicha. My father is bigger than your father, right? Greater than your father. Harisha b'dafka. Necessarily, Shina Kodesh Baruch Hu Mimin Adam, in the creation of man, Mishar Aminim, from all the other creatures that he created. Ubar Rak Adam Yechidi. He only created one single man. Kedei Shelo Yavo B'nei Adam Lidei Mida Megunazu. So people would not come to this lowly concept of racism. Ela Shelafi Zeh, therefore, according to this, Tzrichim Levayer et Pulato Shel Noach. We have to understand, the idea. B'meh shoharid et Canaan l'madreget eved. That he put him down as an eved. Shehishpilo mishar min adam, lower than any other man. V'harizel l'chura pu'ula gazanit ta'ora. This is a case of clear-cut racism, right? Also, we have to understand, right, between the lines of what he's going to say is that one of the great foundations of anti-Semitism is the jealousy that the world has for the Jewish people because of their achievements, and right, and the hatred because we think we're so great. We think we're so great. 2% of the American population, I think, right, and 37% of the Nobel prizes go to the Jews, right? Everything is. We see what's going on today, right? So let's see what he says. So what's going on? Aval be'emet, second paragraph. Ein lezeh shum shaychut im gazanut. Nothing to do with racism that Cham was put down. The gazanut, pirusha, the definition of racism, shegeze echad mitnasei me'al geze acher. That one race, there's a superior race and an inferior race. Miglal motzao v'yichuso, because of his birth, because of his pedigree, right? There's a certain genetic superiority, right? In physicality, right? Blonde and blue-eyed, right? Right? Ukeilu shehu notzer michomer ilahi, as if he was created from a different, a superior physicality. V'tov yoter, much better, ukadoma. Aval kan atam shechilek b'neihem Noach. The reason why there's a distinction between Noach, made a distinction. Haya mishum midotav ha mushchatot shel Cham ubino Knan. It was because of the low midos, the low character traits of Canaan and Cham, right? Umidot elu, these midos, these negative character traits, hinchil hu levanav, they were given over to his children, right? Acharav, they were inherited. Kemoshe Amru Chazal, it's quoting a Gemara here. Chamishet Dvarim Siva, Canaan there was an institution, right? That Canaan taught his children 5 things. Avo et hagezel, love robbery. Va'avo et hazima, love sexual perversion. V'usnu et adonechem, and hate God. Va'al tidabru emes, and don't speak the truth, right? Can't get lower than that, right? So that's what they were all about. This was their credo. This was their constitution, right? Umikivan shara Noach midos ke'elu. When Noach saw these character traits, Esel mishpachat Canaan, by the family of Canaan, me'az, at that point, kilelotam, he cursed them, sheyisharu avadim, they should remain as, they should not have any ability to contribute to society. They should be servants. Kol yemei chayehem v'lo yavo b'kal Yisrael. They should not join into the Jewish people. Ukemoke, therefore, masha anu omrim. Now, that's the other side of the coin. We say, we just went through Yontiv, we said this many times in the Shmona Esrei, Ata v'chartanu mikol ha'amim. We are the chosen people. You chose us from all the nations in the world. Shesonei Yisrael, the anti-Semites, Ta'anu, they say, Shemizeh, anu marim ke'ilu anu choshvim, et atzmenu, that they say that we think we're better than us, superior than anyone else, right? L'miyuchasim, right? Yoter mi'umata olam, right? And the world today, it's not getting any better. I don't have to tell you, right? You read what I read. This woke philosophy, what's happening, it's not getting any better. I just saw yesterday in the news, you may have saw it this morning, in Chicago, there was a ma'aseh recently that a Jew coming home from shul was shot. You saw that, right? Yesterday, and there was no statement from the mayor, but they said nobody said it's a terror thing. Yes, there was an attack of a Muslim, and he came out with a whole statement against the Palestinian, right? But this is what we're living in. This is what's going on today. This is the reality. It's frightening, right? Okay, Lev Malachim Biyad Hashem. We don't know what Hashem wants, but we have to daven. We have to do what we're supposed to do, right? We can't ask why, right? The Baruch is doing what he's doing, but he expects us to do what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be doing what we're doing here right now, learning Torah, doing mitzvahs. We have to do what we do. That's what he wants us to do, and things are gonna in Hashem get better, and he'll do what he has to do, what he's always done throughout Jewish history, right? Shesone Yisrael ta'anu, The anti-Semites say, "Shemizeh anu marim keilu anu choshvim." I'm repeating myself. Et atzmenu miyuchasim yoter miyumot haolam. We're a superior race. Vadai ein ze mishum shedat Yisrael gazaniti. Chas v'shalom. This, God forbid, this is not we're a race. We're not a race. We're not a superior race. It has nothing to do with our physicality. Nothing. Ele sha'anu omrim, but we say, kivan sha'anu yorashnu midot, muhuganot, visharot, that we inherited spiritual energy, proper midos, me'avirei deya, from the great Ke'ilu Kamo Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, from our Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, we received all of the spiritual energy. Va'anu amadnu b'Har Sinai, and we stood at Har Sinai. V'kibalnu Torah Hashem, we received the Torah, mipi Moshe Rabbeinu. Memela, therefore, anu b'nei Maila, yoter misharim. Therefore, we are superior because of the Torah, because of our responsibility, right? And if we don't keep the Torah, we're, in fact, the Gemara, so you can say, like, if we're so good, what do we need? What do we need the Torah for, right? We need the Torah, the Gemara says, because Yisrael is azim shebu umot. We're the worst of the worst, right? If we didn't have the Torah, we would be worse than Knan and Cham, right? So we need the Torah to keep us in line, right? Ki harayanu, shiparnu et atzmeinu. We beautified ourselves, b'midot tovot, with proper midos, ubihit karvut l'Hashem yitbarach, and embracing the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Aval hare kol mi sherotzeh, that anybody out there that wants to, yachol lihitgayer, ulihitstaref eleinu, and to join us. Va'az gam hu yachol lomar al atzmo ata v'chartanu mikol ha'amim. Even the Ger Tzedek can say, the righteous convert, you chose me from all the other nations. Masha ein zeh met b'sharumot, you can't say that. Mot hagazaniot shalom marshim le'echad min hachutz litztaref aleim. Nobody joins up with them, right? Umuchrach zeh mimasha anu amrim, and that's what we say. Ata b'chartanu mikol ha'amim. You chose us from all the other nations. V'chein omrim anu b'vichat haTorah, and we say the same thing in B'vichat haTorah. Kol yom asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, you chose us from all the other nations. V'aval pikein b'seder haslichot anu omrim. Even though notwithstanding we say asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, but what have we been saying in Slichos the last few months, right? Ashamnu mikol ha'am, we're the worst, like the Gemara says. Azim shebu umat, we're the worst from all the nations. Ulechur zeh tamua, it's a contradiction. How can we say we're the best? Yet we sin more than anybody else. But that's what this is what we've been saying here. That we're saying malatenu anivcheret imkein mikevan shechatanu velo shamarnu et atzmenu, since we sinned. We didn't keep the covenant. Im kein memela anu ashamnu mikolam. Ki kekol shenitgadel b'madregat ha'adam kein tegadel chatato im yechashel. The bigger the person is, the worse his sin. Right? That's right. That's what the Gemara says. Right? So that's why the Jewish people have to have the Torah. If we didn't have the Torah, we would be the worst nation. So as I say, this piece from Rabbi Yaakov is like the Lutzato says. I'm just giving you over things that we already know. But I think it's worthwhile hearing it the way Rabbi Yaakov said it. Okay, thank you all.